All right. So yeah, it's been a few weeks, but we're up to Hakdama Vav, page Sadik Gimel. So the last time we just did the last Hakdama was just a very basic general overview of the Esser Sefiros and the idea that although they're Esser Sefiros, they're all one thing, right? And we talked about that, how really the differentiation between the Sefiros and the idea that the Chesed is different from Din and Netzach and Hod and Yisod and Kesser and all the different spheres represent sort of different, different expressions of the Ratzon Hashem or different energies, or we experience different things. And we talked about way back when, like, if I'm driving down the street and I hit a red light, like, oh, so this is Gevura happening, right? But really, we talked about last week. Really, that's just from our perspective, right? We looked at a little bit of Pardes Rimonim from Rav Moshe Cordovera. The way he describes it, it's very much only from our perspective. From HaKadosh Baruch Hu's perspective, there's no difference between a red light and a green light. There's no difference between stop and go, between generosity and stinginess, between right and wrong. There is no such thing. Rambam discusses that in Mor Nevuchim as well, that from a Kodesh Baruch Hu's perspective, there can't possibly be any real difference between right and wrong, because then you would say that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is constrained by, right, that right and wrong exist outside of a Kodesh Baruch Hu and constrain the definitions that a Kodesh Baruch Hu can give things. So really, there is no difference between those things. They're just matters of convention based on our perspective, how we experience those things. And so that was sort of a critical, important foundation to talking about the Esher Sefiros, because the danger of as we talk about the Esher Sefiros, and especially as we get into more complex discussions of how they're organized and partsufim and ulamos and different ways that the Esher Sefiros show up, is the danger of Hakshama, and to think that there's something other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's independent force, right? There's a force called Chesed. There's a force called Gevura. And we can pay lip service to the idea, like the Zohar says, that we daven we daven to Hakadosh Baruch Hu derech middos, not to the spheres. Of course, we don't daven to the spheres. One of the big early criticisms of the Arizal's Kabbalah was that and the kavvanah of the Arizal, that you're davening to spheres as if spheres, it's an avodah zarah, spheres are not independent forces. And Mikubalim attempted to clarify that's not the case. We're trying to connect to different parts of davening through an awareness of what they're communicating to us, and that can only do that through defined mediums, and those are the Esser spheres. So that's why we connect different spheres, different tefillos and things like that. But ultimately, it's very important to keep grounded in the fact that they're all the same thing. All the chesed is the exact same thing as gevura, really. Or the energy, the light, the ratzon that creates chesed, or that reflects itself to us as chesed, or that we experience as chesed, is the exact same light, the exact same ratzon that we experience as gevura. When we experience good times and when we experience challenging times, it's the exact same ratzon that is manifesting both of those things. There's no, it's not, well, now HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be nice to you, so you win the lottery. Now HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be mean to you, so your house burns down. No, it's the same exact thing. There's only one Ratzon Hashem. There's not different Ratzon Hashems. There's no parts in Kodesh Baruch Hu. There's one Ratzon Hashem. We are experiencing things in different ways, and that's all being processed through our perspective, but it's not reflecting sort of the truth of what these things are. Okay, so then at the beginning of the previous Hakdama, he noted that the several Hakdamas that are going to follow are going to talk about a variety of different distinctions that exist within the spheres, and he's going to basically he says he basically told us that he's going to go from numerically. He's going to start with one, the idea that Esser spheres are really just one thing. Then he's going to go to two, that you can divide the spheres into two categories. Then he's going to go to three, you can divide them into three different groupings. Then you can divide them into four, connected the olamos, and then you can divide them into five, connected the bechinas of the neshama and partsuf and so on. So now we're up to number two, right? So we're going to divide the spheros, we're going to divide the Esser spheres and conceptualize the Esser spheres into two groupings, one called mochin and the other called middos. So we begin. So So now we're going to explain how the 10 spheres can be divided into two aspects, two groups. Echad, or Aleph, Hashalosh Rishonos Keser Chachma Bina Hein Hamochin. The first three Sefiros, Keser, Chachma, and Bina, these are the mochin. These are the consciousness, the mind. The Hasheva Tachtonos, and the 7 lower Sefiros, Chagas Nahim, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus, Hein Hamiddos. Those are middos, right? Character traits, expressions, right? Active expressions, emotional and behavioral expressions of the Sefiros. But we're dividing them into these two categories: middos in the bottom 7, and mochin for the top 3. Ubiyurahu, and the explanation of all of this is as follows. Based on the pasuk says that mibisari echze lokai, pasuk in Eov, through my flesh, through my guf, I see God. Dahainu shemi guf ha'adam yecholim liros lisbonin b'midosav shel Hashem yisbaruch b'olamos ha'elyonim. Through our bodies, right, through our physical bodies, and everything contained within our physical bodies. So not just not to exclude our physical body, but also our emotions and our minds, and the way our minds work, and the way our emotions work, and the way our bodies work, and all the parts of our bodies, and so on and so forth. Through those things, we can understand, and we can gain, again, we can't really understand, but we can reflect on and gain some appreciation of the structure through which it appears to us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. We can gain a sense of that by looking deeply, sensitively, and carefully and in detail at ourselves. B'zeh kavvanah sakasav, and this is the intent of the pasuk when the pasuk says "Ki b'tselem Elokim asa es adam," that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created human beings b'tselem Elokim. What does that mean? Lefi sheyesh b'komas ha'adam b'seder evarav dugmas ha'olamos ha'elyonim ha'kalulu me'eser sefiros. That in the created human being, in all aspects of the created human being, what you have is a dugma, is an exemplification of all of the olamos elyonim, all of the systems and all of the ways through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates the world, right? B'tselem Elokim, right? The name Elokim is the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that reflects the idea of din, the idea of structure. So the architecture, so to speak, of the world, right? We can't really understand how it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu animates the world exactly. That's beyond structure, right? How is it that you take afar min hadama, you take the form of a human being carved out of clay, and somehow now there's life in that, right? How is it that there's a structure of the world, but somehow there's a living energy that is animating the world from second to second to second? That's not the guf. That's not the structure of the world. That's not the Elokim aspect of the world. That's the Shem Havaya. That's the Yud Kei Vav Kei aspect of the world. The sort of Racham, the Chesed or the Rachamim that's constantly flowing into the world. The Shefa of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's constantly flowing into the world. That is not Mibisari Echze Elokai. That's not B'Tselem Elokim. The B'Tselem Elokim aspect is we can understand the structural sense in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created the systems through which the world operates. We can understand that through the system of how we operate. How can we understand the other part? That's really being attentive to the neshama, not the guf, right? Mibisari echze elokai is very physical. Mibisari echze elokai, I'm going to understand the elokus, I'm going to understand the structural aspect of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu has organized reality through the structured, delineated expression of the Ratzon Hashem. I can understand that through my physical being. Now, if I'm attentive also to my spiritual being, my neshama, how is it that this structure, the architecture, the dead architecture of my body, right? The atzamas yaveshim, right? The dry bones of a human body, how can they be infused with life, like in the Nevuah of Yecheskel? That's only through the infusion of Elokus, it's the wrong name to use, I guess, but that's only through the infusion of shefa directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's neshama. That's chelek Elokai Mimal. How is it that the structure of the world actually turns and works and functions? That's something that's beyond just the structure. But to understand the structure of things, we look at ourselves and we can understand this a little bit. Okay, so I just want to go back a little bit into the commentary here because it's very worthwhile.
Just on the middos part, or it's also going on the mochin?
On both.
It's going on both.
On both. Yeah. Meaning any part of the human being can be understood in terms of, right. Meaning we've spoken about this, but right, like every minute aspect and very large aspect of reality is a closed system, right? I take the smallest molecule and the subatomic particle and so on and so forth. That's a system in and of itself, right? It exists. Because it exists, everything in existence is contained within that tiny, tiny little thing. So Esser Sefiros are there. So we could zoom bigger and say the same thing. So if I take the guf, right, my besari Arizal lokai, if I take my guf, my physical, bodily, worldly being, so there's going to be a system of Esser Sefiros within there. What are the Esser Sefiros? Well, there's going to be gimel mochin. There's going to be the conscious functioning of the human being. That's my head. That's my brain. That's not really my brain. It's a physical aspect of my body, but my consciousness, right? And that has different parts to it. And then there's going to be the more physical aspect of my being, of my physical being.
But when you bring down this possible middos episode, that sounds like when middos is going more on the physical aspect, not on the.
Yes, 100%. Yes, meaning, but part of that is right from the low. Even in the lowest thing, I can see the same thing. Of course, for sure, I can see a lokai in my neshama. My neshama is a chelek Elokai Mimal. If I'm going to look at the spiritual makeup of my living, breathing existence, no surprise, I can find God, the system of God's ratzon in the 5 parts of my neshama and so on and so forth. That's not first of all, that's not so helpful because I'm a physical being in a physical world. So for me to understand the neshama is already a very hard thing to do because I'm not really, I can't really connect fully to that. But my body, I understand. Right, touch it. I can pinch it. I feel it.
I guess what I'm stuck on is the right?
Yeah.
He says that now we're going to discuss the 10 spheres, and he splits it up like the 3 top ones and 3 bottom ones. And he says, and it sounds like saying and the explanation for it is this pasuk.
Through this pasuk, meaning through this pasuk, we're going to understand this idea of mochin and middos. The idea that we can split the spheres into these 2 levels, we can understand it through the idea of midbasari Arizal lokai. We're going to look at ourselves and we're going to see how we are made up of mochin and middos. And by us being made up of mochin and middos, now we can understand why the Esser Sefiros, which is the architecture, the framework, which everything is made of, is also mochin and middos. Okay, so. I'm gonna skip the first one. It's not. I mean, it's short, but it's also not that fine. Whatever. Okay, fine. So Aleph hamochin. So the first 3 spheres are as a group are really one thing. That the first 3 spheres, Keser, Chachma, Bina, or Chachma, Bina, Das, depending on how you're counting them, and depending on whose perspective you're looking at it from. But the first 3 spheros are really one system. They make up a single entity. They're Gimel Mochin, and they make up a single entity. V'nikra Reisha Delois Yada. And those 3 things taken together make up something called Reisha Delois Yada, which means, right, again, depending on how much you're zooming in or zooming out on a system, Reisha Delos Yada is, I don't know. Okay, fine. So the Arizal talks about how Keser, right? So Keser is the highest, right? The highest of the Esser spheres. Really, Keser is a sphere that lives beyond my conscious mind, right? There's Chachma and Bina, there's right brain and left brain functioning. There's Das, which is Keneged, sort of the amygdala and the mechanism through which my right brain and left brain work together to then send messages throughout my entire body. Okay, so Das is here, Chachma Bina, my right brain and my left brain, big thinking, detailed thinking. Das is down here, the beginning of my spinal cord, which feeds into the amygdala of my brain, or the amygdala of my brain takes my right brain and my left brain, takes all of that and feeds it into my body. So stimuli go up my spinal cord into my brain, and my brain responds to those stimuli through my spine, through the amygdala down into the rest of my body. And Keser is higher than Chachma and Bina. So Keser really is higher than my brain. And so the Arizal talks about how Keser itself is made up of three different heads, so to speak, are contained within Keser itself. Together, together, those three, or again, if you're zooming out more, so you're not being as detailed, so you could take you could take Chachma, Bina, Keser, Chachma, and Bina all together as a system of three, and that's the beginning of any system of Esser Sefiros. But you take those first three, and together they make a single thing called Reisha Delos Yada. Reisha Delos Yada means the thing you don't really have access to, right? It's the Rosh that we don't understand, we don't know anything about. So, right, the idea being that as high up as I go in my understanding, either of myself or of anything that's out there, or of how any of this works, there's always going to be a point at which I reach a point where the next thing beyond that is Reisha Delos Yada, right? I've gotten all the way to the top, but there's something above the top, and that's because, by definition, because it's above the top, I can't give it words, and I can't understand it, and I can't grasp it, and I can't give it any kind of definition, and so it's Reisha Delos Yada. Okay, so Gimel Pamim are Ola B'Gematria Keser. Im HaKolel, so right, so if you the word or three times, including the kolel, which right, if you write, so you take in gematria, there's this nifty tool, or at least when I was in elementary school, I thought that this is the cop out in gematria, where if you're one off in a gematria, so you do it im HaKolel, right, meaning the whole word itself counts as another one, and then it works. Right. No one explained to me how this works. I don't think any of my rebbeim understood how this really works. But the idea of using a kolel in gematria is communicating to you the remez of that gematria, is also saying to you that creating that equivalency entails some kind of unity of the parts of that word. That's what's being communicated through the remez. That's what using a kolel is. So here, taking the idea of if you take the word or three times, plus the kolel, meaning you take the three ors together as a single unit, that equals Keser. That makes sense?
One more or three ors?
21.
I don't know, do the math.
621.
Do the math.
4 times 3, 621.
Okay.
And Keser is
620. So it's so yeah. So yeah.
So that's them.
Right. Meaning so R, right, exactly. Right. So it's only you're only one more.
Only one time, not three times.
Huh? Yeah. Okay. If I have to do it a different way, you could do it three times. Whatever. Okay. Fine. Okay. Umakar ha'inyan b'zohar kadosh, and the origin of this idea that the three mochin create this one entity called the Keser, called the Rosh. Ki Rosh ha'elyon kol gimel rishonos shehim chashuvas ka'achas. So this is a source in the Zohar, b'Maval Sha'arim, and Maval Sha'arim, which is another edition of sort of the Arizal's writings. There are sort of a few different traditions based on different students of the Arizal, Rav Chaim Vital, and others about how the Arizal's writings get put together. The Arizal didn't write anything; his students wrote stuff and put together different writings into books. Historically and traditionally, the Kisvei Arizal, one of the reasons why the Kisvei Arizal are inaccessible or have always been very, very difficult to access, is partly because the subject matter is sort of difficult. Well, subject matter is not so difficult. One of the bigger reasons is that No one has any idea what they're really looking at when you look at the Sifsei Arizal until relatively recently, when you have like standard printed editions of the Sifsei Arizal. But before that, very interestingly, the Lesson Shavov Achlama in his introduction to one of his books called Shar HaPon HaKadim, he has a 5 or 6 page introduction where he goes through like just lists and lists of manuscripts and print editions of the Sifsei Arizal and trying to explain that these are good and these are not good, and you take this part from this one and this part from the other one, because it's a giant mess. But in any case, so Mavo Sha'arim, we often talk about Eitz Chaim, which is a sort of a primary text of the Sifsei Arizal. But Mavo Sha'arim is another one, through a different tradition of how to organize the books. Okay, in any case, know that Gimel Roshos Chashuvas Ke'echad Ve'en L'cha Pgam Gadol Kazeh Gimel Roshos Unifrados. Right, so it's a very, very terrible thing to ever separate these two and ever think that these three are not a singular system. Okay, whatever. It doesn't.
This is the Rishad Lo Ziyada. It's Keser Bina. Keser Chachma Bina.
So it depends. Meaning, Keser. It depends what you're looking at.
That there's on top of Keser is the Rishad Lo Ziyada.
So it depends where you are and what you're looking at. If I'm looking at, if I'm looking up from the middos at the mochin, so then the mochin of Keser Chachma Bina are the 3 aspects that make the resha of the head, so to speak, of this system that I'm presently in, and that becomes the resha de lo siyada. Because from the perspective of middos, the head is inscrutable. The head, right? But if I'm in the head, then I can understand the parts of the head. But Keser then becomes the resha de lo siyada, which contains within it 3 parts. Okay, it depends on how close, how deeply I'm zooming in. Right? Meaning every part of the system is itself a complete system. So if I'm looking at you, so I see you have a head and you have a body, right? And compare relative to your body, your head is, much, incomprehensible. How is it that your very physical body and and everything that goes on in your head actually work out? How does that work together? How does that function? Can't possibly understand the head. But when I get in your head, now I start to understand your head, because the thing I'm looking at is not you as a whole, it's just your head. Right? So now your head becomes something graspable. That's the system I'm looking at. So that system in and of itself is going to have a resha de lo siyada. Yeah, makes sense?
To a degree.
Okay, you're going to have a subconscious. You're going to have a higher awareness. You're going to have a deep rut zone that makes you tick, that even you're not self-aware of. Right? So why do you like vanilla ice cream? I don't know what kind of ice cream you like, but let's say you like vanilla ice cream, you don't like chocolate ice cream. Why? So from the perspective of your body, I don't know why. What's the difference? Vanilla ice cream, chocolate ice cream. I don't know. Okay. When I get into your head and I start probing why you like vanilla or chocolate, well, maybe you had a bad experience with chocolate one time, or maybe you have fond memories of your mother serving you vanilla ice cream on a hot summer day. Right? Right. So now I'm in your head. Now I start to understand why you like chocolate. Why? But if we start breaking those down even more, why do you have that? Why is that memory of your mother a fond one? Why do you process it that way? Why do you process that negative experience with chocolate ice cream in a negative way? What's behind that? Now we're in territory we don't have an answer for, right? Just because. So that's now the resha de lo siyada of being in your head, so to speak. Okay, so B'Tselem Elokim. Okay, Chein Isa b'Zohar. So this is what it says in the Zohar. Kishabar HaKadosh Baruch Hu asa Adam sider bo hatzura shel kol hasodos me'olam ha'elyon u'me'olam ha'tachton. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the human being, he set the human being up, he set the structure of the human being, the tzura of the human being, so as to include all of the secrets of the olam ha'elyon and the olam ha'tachton. Reading the human being then, therefore, is reflecting the full structure of reality, right? Reality consists of olamos elyonim, olamos tachtonim, right? The lower physical realities and the upper, non-physical realities, and just pure Ratzon Hashem. And all of that is reflected in the structure of the human being. Shenevra b'tselem Elokim. Hakol chakok ba'adam, all of that the entire structure of reality is engraved into the nature of the human being. Shenivra b'tselem Elokim, because the human being was made b'tselem Elokim. The cause of Hamarshal Gemara, and the Marshal writes, "Rochetz Adam Panav Yadav Raglo Shenemar Kol Paal Hashem Liminei." A person should wash their hands and their feet and their face. Uperish Rashi B'Shvil Kavod Kona. Why do you clean yourself? Why do you wash yourself? Why do you take care of yourself? Why do you try to be presentable, etc., etc.? Rashi says it's to honor your maker. So in your face, you should wash your face, because that's right. That's the tselem, so to speak, right? That's the countenance of the person is their face. And also your hands and your feet, not just your face, but also your hands and your feet, and every other part of your body is also dugma shalamala. It's also exemplifies and reflects the reality that exists above. The Eser Etzbos Yadav V'Raglav Kedas Mekbalim. The Marsha says, like you have 10 fingers and 10 toes. Why do you have 10 fingers and 10 toes? Well, there are 10 Sefiros, so that's why you have 10 fingers, and that's why you have 10 toes. In the world, everything gets done in systems of 10, so you have 10 fingers and 10 toes. Why do you have? We're not getting into this. We mentioned it once upon a time earlier. Right? Why do you have 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, but only 1 mouth? Well, because there are certain systems up there that about how the Ratzon Hashem is filtered from level to level, and ultimately different aspects of the Ratzon Hashem sort of unify into a singular whole to create a new reality. That is reflected in the structure of your face, from your ears to your right. I have 2 openings in my ears, and they're very far apart from each other. They can't even see each other. And then I have 2 openings for my nose, right? Those represent, the Arizal says, they reflect the reality that there's an or makif and an or penimi. There's an aspect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's all powerful and all encompassing, and isn't structured in any way. And that's my right ear. And there's my left ear. The left side is always gevura, is always structure and limitation, and so on and so forth. And at a very, very high level, those 2 things can't coexist with each other. Right? Relative to my face, my ears are at a high level, right? So I look at my ears and say, well, high up my face, those 2 elements of those 2 reflections of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they don't coexist, right? Because in a very, very high place, the power of the yichud energy of Sovev Kol Alman, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Bechinas Chachma, of just everything is just one thing, is so powerful that at any time the right is present, the left just disappears. And anytime the left is present, the right, that powerful yichud energy of the right ear can't exist in the same place at the same time. So my ears are on opposite sides of my face. But the aura continues down, and the next time it expresses itself, they get the oros, those 2 different kinds of oros, they get relatively weaker and stronger. The yichud, as the Ratzon Hashem filters down, so to speak, from the Ein Sof down to where we are, the Ein Sophius of it, the infinity of it, gets weaker, right? Otherwise, we couldn't grasp it in any way. We couldn't experience anything. We wouldn't exist, as we've said many times. So as the Ratzon Hashem filters down, the yichud power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets weaker, so to speak, and the pirud, or penimi, the mamali kol alman, the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists within differentiated reality, that's becoming stronger. That giloy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is becoming stronger. So now when the or moves from higher up in my head, my face, and my ears, to lower down where my nose is, so the power of the yichud is weaker, and the power of the individuality and structure and differentiation is stronger, so they can coexist. But they're different from each other. So I have 2 nostrils. And then it goes down even further and comes to the mouth. The mouth is the only one of my facial orifices that puts out something, right? I receive in my ear. Okay? The Arizal writes that all of your facial orifices put out things. He says, it's interesting. He says, how do you know? You play the seashell game with your ears, right? You put something on your ear. Remember when you're like your mother told, put a seashell in your ear and you can hear the ocean, and then you realize that all you have to do is do this, and you can also hear the same thing. No one. I never trusted my mother the same way after. Whatever. All right. So the Arizal says, how do you know there's aura coming out of your ear, so to speak? Well, put your finger in your ear and you can hear it. you can hear that something is stuck in there, so to speak. The air is stuck in there and it's circulating there. Right? Certainly things come out of our noses. But the thing that comes out of our mouth is an entirely new reality. It's speech, it's words. The words that come out of our mouths make things, right? Things don't exist unless we can name them and identify them. And once we can put names to them, now they're real. So now that when the aura comes out of the mouth, so to speak, now it's creating new realities. At that point, those two oros, which in my ears started on opposite sides of my head, and my nose got closer together, but we're still separate. In my mouth, there's only one mouth, and everything comes out together in the mouth. Those two oros, the yichud of Hashem and the separateness of Hashem, right? The Shem Havai and the Shem Elokim now are balanced with each other. And what comes into reality is a balance of here's God, oh, also here's not really God. And now you can handle that, and you have a perfectly balanced, equally balanced structure that comes out there. And so right, we can. It's not just my face that I can see this on, right? In my face, I can see this on, but right. So the Maharsha is saying, well, but also your fingers and also your toes. You got 10 fingers and 10 toes, so 10 spheres, like the Mekubalim, right? B'shomer Amunim. And in the Sefer, right, from an important Italian Makubal Rav Yosef Ergas in the 1600s, he writes in a book called Shomer Amunim, he says, Herech levar bepratus eich haguf ha'adam romez le'inyanim elyonim esodos nelam. So it goes on at great length over there. The Shomer Amunim is an interesting Sefer in general. Right, the Italian, Italians in the 1700s, they liked to write dialogues. Right, they wrote books as dialogue. Right, you see the Ramchal doing this. Right, he has Das Tvunos, which is a dialogue between the neshama and the guf. The secular non-Jewish philosophers and writers were doing the same thing. Political philosophers, everyone is writing dialogue. It's a good way to get your point across because you get to make both sides of the argument the way you want to in one book. But it looks like you're like right much earlier. Right, Rabbi Yehuda Chassid does this with the Kuzari. But in any case, so the Shomer Amunim is framed as a dialogue between a pro-Kabbalah Kabbalist and an anti-Kabbalah Rosh Yeshiva, basically, and so they go back and forth with each other about Kabbalah, and then the Makubal is explaining throughout the book. He's explaining in response to common objections to Kabbalah, where he's answering them all. He's trying to answer them all. So in any case, in that book, so Rav Yosef Ergas, he he discusses at great length how every little detail of the human body sort of what it corresponds to and how it corresponds to different things. Okay. However, yesh lizar v'leda. However, it's important to be careful with this idea. Right? If we're going to talk about mibisari echze elokai, it requires a little bit of caution. Ki bashamayim mimal ein shum metzias shel kelim b'sfiras gashmiim. Because in Shemayim, the truth is there's no such thing as material things, right? V'asur lanu l'tzayer shum dumos v'tzura u'mashi yodeh misvar makadoshim she'asur sfiras ne'achezas b'zu bezu kedimyon eivarim ba'adam lo chas v'shalom she'yesh b'hem tzura v'dumos. Right, so we shouldn't think. Now we're talking about esser spheres corresponding to body parts. Do not make the terrible and awful and very, very bad mistake of them thinking that there are body parts up there, right? There's a right hand, God, Hashem has a right hand, and Hashem has a left hand, and Hashem has a right foot and a left foot, and this brain and that brain, and a heart, and an amygdala, and a spinal column, etc. Right? Don't make that mistake, and don't think of the spheres that way. You can see the spheres reflected in your body, but that doesn't mean that your body, that up there is a reflection of your body, right? Basically. Right. This was a common an issue that was brought up in the generations after the Arizal in general. Right. We talked about this early on, whether what the Arizal was doing in his Kabbalah, is it a mashal for something, or is it like the truth? Right. Is he describing something that actually exists? When he describes olamos and systems of Sefiros and partzufim and how they interact with each other, is he describing something that actually exists? Or is he using all of this as a mashal for something else? And there are different ways to approach this, and we talked about four different streams, right? The Rashash and the Ramchal and the Gra and the Baal Shem Tov that grow out of the Arizal that interpret what he's doing in different ways. But one of the for those who took the Arizal as like a mushal for something, one of the important like extra twists in that is that the proper way to understand it is not that the Arizal is describing Olamos Elyonim and like higher spiritual realities, and those are a mushal for my body or my brain or history or whatever it happens to be. Rather, it's the other way around, right? My body is a mushal for how things work up there. How things work up there is not, the nimshal is not me. The nimshal is that, right? Anytime you make an analogy, right? You have the thing that you can grasp and you've defined. You have the thing that you're trying to give information over based on the thing that's concrete. The thing that's concrete is my body, not the olamos elyonim. The thing that I'm trying to describe with a concrete metaphor, but I can't really describe accurately, that's up there. So the mibisari echse elokai is working like backwards, right? It's like mibisari echse, right? For my concrete human experience, I can gain some little bit of sense of what things must be up there, because nothing down here comes from nowhere. Everything down here has a shorish up there. So I can reason backwards. Well, if this is down here, it must be something corresponding to it up there. But don't make the mistake and think that what's up there is the same as what's down here. There's a correspondence, and there's a source, and there's a shorish and an anat. There's a root and there's a branch, so to speak. Or there's root, there's a tree, and then there's the fruit of the tree. And they're genetically identical, sort of, right? But they're not the same thing. So lo chas v'shalom sheyesh lam tzur of demos came Sefiros ruchanios dakos menadakos pshutos betachlos v'heim ma'oros elohuyos. Yeduos masigos es konam kol echas kefim malos madrigaso. So the Sefiros are celestial, not celestial is still physical, right? But are otherworldly, impossible things to comprehend. But in the human body, there are things that provide us with symbols and metaphors and ramazim that hint to us about what those things that we can't grasp are, so that we can have some appreciation of what they are, right? It's not that a red light corresponds to Gevura. It's that through a red light, I can appreciate that there's something up there making things stop as opposed to go. What that thing is, it's not a light, right? It's not a stop sign. It's not a green light. It's not a red light, right? It's something else entirely. But the thing down here is a concrete reflection of something much more inconcrete that exists up there. And again, the importance of that is that it forces us back into up there, everything is miyuchad, right? There's no parts. There's no different gods controlling different things. It's all one thing. It's all one expression of Ratzon Hashem. But my experience down here allows me to grasp the ungraspable by giving it some structure in that way. Shenamar Nasa Adam B'Tzalmenu Kidmusenu, as it says in Bereshis, right? That Hashem says Nasa Adam B'Tzalmenu Kidmusenu. Hakol dugma lepirkei merkava, right? The entire human being is a dugma, is an approximation of the different parts of the merkava, the different parts of the chariot. So, right, the vehicle through which Hakadosh Baruch Hu is revealed up there, right, in the Nevuah of Yecheskel, but also down here, right? Lefichach Amar Akasav Hu Ascha V'Chonenecha. Right, so we're an approximation, we're a shorthand for what goes on up there. Through that shorthand, we can understand where it's coming from. So because it has to come from something that can produce this, but I can't really figure out what that thing is. Okay. So, for example, this is valuable only. I have a broken watch, so someone just let me know like what time it is. I don't have a watch at all. My watch broke, but I can't see on my phone.
9 o'clock.
It's 9 o'clock. Okay, fine. So, I was hoping maybe we'll get to it. Okay, so mashal madar doma, loosios yad. So, for example, take the letters Yud Dalet, right hand, the ayin, and ayin yud nun I, ayin I. Shehem zecher l'tavnes ha'ayin o ayad. The letters, the letters together, yud dalid, are a zecher for the thing that is a hand, that we call a hand. Or the words ayin yud nun are a zecher for the thing we call an eye. V'chein osios ruvein, hem zecher l'tavnes ruvein, right? The letters that form the word ruvein, they are not ruvein. They are a way that we refer to the thing that we call ruvein, because how else do we grasp ruvein, right? We have to put a name to ruvein, and so we put some letters together, and now these words on the page, ruvein, or the words coming out of my mouth, ruvein, correspond to a person, right? And that person is right. That's not any person. That's unique. That's a particular person, particular makeup, character, history, background, family, whatever, a whole universe that person is, right? Adam Olam Male. That whole universe is encapsulated in the word Ruvain, but the word Ruvain is not that. It's just a tool, a reference that we use to give us something to. If we didn't have a shorthand for the person Ruvain, we can talk about him at all and relate to him at all. Right? The letters are not the thing itself. Shel Ruvein v'tavnes u'mahuso. Elarak zikaron she'elu osios Ruvein aksuvim hu siman keneged oso etzem v'tavnes hayedua shel Ruvein. Right, the words, the letters are a symbol for Ruvein. They're not Ruvein. V'chein tzuras ha'ivarim sheyesh banu heim asuim kedimyon simanim le'inyanim stumim elyonim she'in hadas yachol adatim. Likewise, our physical qualities, right? The Misari Echzel Lokai, my right hand, my left hand, that is a siman that's not, my right hand is not chesed. It's not the sphere of chesed. It's a siman for the sphere of chesed. It's a way through which I can connect to the idea and begin to conceptualize the idea of the sphere of chesed, but it's not the sphere of chesed. It's just a pale, it's not even a reflection, it's a reflection of chesed, but it's a very pale reflection and poor approximation of the real thing. Right, the word Ruvain is not the person Ruvain. It's just I can capture the thing called Ruvain, even though I don't understand what Ruvain really is, because I'm not Ruvain. I can't. Right, I can't understand Ruvain until I stand in his shoes. But I use the word Ruvain, and now I can refer to Ruvain and concept. I can picture Ruvain in my head. Picturing Ruvain in my head is not just picturing his physical form and his face. I picture the whole thing that is Ruvain. Right, everything about Ruvain like runs through my brain when I Ruvain. Right, so the same thing that we're talking, the same thing applies over here. When we talk about Misari Echzel Lokai, we're seeing. I have a hand, I have an eye, I have a mouth, I have a heart, I have a brain, right brain, left brain, etc. Well, all these things, these middos, those mochin middos, the different kinds of middos, they're all just simanim for other things. Ve'ein mahus hayad k'mahus yad, va'ayin k'mahus ayin. Right, it's not that my hand is like that. It's like a hand up there. It's not like my eye is like an eye up there. Right? Who can compare to me and be equated? Right? Who can do that properly? We can't. Okay. Ubishalah Hakadosh, and the Shalah writes, Herich, the Shalah expands on this. Everything that we have down here physically is an expression and an enclothing of the shefa, of the Ratzon Hashem that exists above, right? So physical hand, which is much more defined and very megushan and very material and limited, therefore, is enclothing the energy, not just like physically, right? Inside my hand, there's an energy called hand, but like the concept of physical hand is the kli for the energy that corresponds to yad. Up above. Right, that shefa goes down, it flows down from level to level to level. Elef alfe alafim pa'amim, thousands and thousands and thousands of times with tzimtzum, machar tzimtzum, to make it more graspable, more receivable, and so on. Until that ratzon ultimately has been boiled down so much or watered down so much, so that it ends up as this. So this is not that, right? This can only come from that, but I can't reverse engineer it. It's not the same. V'gam ma she'anu korim yad v'regel eino rak shem hamushala yad elyona b'shmi ma'al v'chein k'mo chen shem adam hu rak mishum shehu doma b'shalshel samata elf alfa elf l'adam elyon. Right, and even the word adam itself, right? It's machlokus in the Gemara, right, between the Rabbanan and Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, actually, right? Why Adam is Adam, but the Rabbanan say that Adam is Adam. Why is Adam called Adam? Because we're made from Adama. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says Adam is made from is not. Why is Adam called Adam? Because we're Adama to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're like how we're approximations of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, and that's why. So two very different visions of what a person is. But obviously here we're going to pick up a Rav Shimon Bar Yochai's version, and that's a much more lofty version. Okay, fine. So in any case, I wanted to do one more. What time is it? Is it very, very late?
9:07.
It's 9:07. Okay, fine. Maybe we'll try to do something very quickly. So I want to do one thing related to this idea of middos lokai, which I want to just skip to the bottom to Levias Chein, to the second column on page Tzaddik Hey, just the next page here, where he brings. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. That's good to me. Not always sure. Okay, so he brings here just to develop this idea and appreciate this idea of middos lokai and how it can function or what you can do with it. He brings down a kavvanah from the Arizal, related to davening and learning that the Arizal brings down. And the idea of this kavvanah is to utilize the kavvanah to then appreciate how my body, which is doing the learning or doing the davening, as I experience my body doing the thing that it's doing, I should appreciate that what I'm actually experiencing is different aspects of Elokus operating through my body, being reflected through my body. It's fascinating. It's among the Yehudim and Kabbalah of the Arizal. It's actually a relatively easy one to get through. I also charted it out, and I printed it out, which is so it can be the chart also can be useful. But in any case, okay. So here's what he says. He says the So we find this idea in detail in Sefer Pri-Eitz Chaim, which is one of the versions of the Arizal's kavanos on davening and other things. It's also brought down in the Siv Mitzvosecha. V'zel Lashon Kadsho. Okay. Yichud zeh roi la'adam l'chaven la'arech ki'ilu hu mador v'kisei la'atzilas hakadosh. So it's appropriate. This yichud. It's appropriate for a person to be mechaven this yichud. To be mechaven something means to align yourself with something, right? So you're trying to mentally, more specific kavvanos to do with mentally, emotionally, etc. But let's just say mentally, you're trying to mentally align yourself with the reality of the things that we're talking about, as if making yourself into a dwelling place and a kisei, right, a chair and a dwelling for ha'atzilos hakadosh, for the divine, for the holy expression of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Ki halo b'tzelem elokim asa sadam, because right, God creates the human being, not created once upon a time, but creates constantly the human being b'tzelem elokim. So we're constantly, our makeup at any given moment is a constant and complete and ongoing expression of the makeup of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the totality of the Ratzon Hashem. So what do you do? V'lachein b'prat b'zman HaTorah v'tefilo hu yoser milchrach u'bezet kubal tefilas v'torah. And this is especially useful when you're davening or you're learning, by doing this, your tefillah will be more niskabel, or your learning will be more niskabel. Why? Because what are you actually doing? You're actually turning yourself into a vehicle for connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because in your own kavvanah, you are literally connecting yourself with different aspects of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? It's not I'm a person and you're over there and I'm davening to you. On the contrary, it becomes you're here in my words, in my ears, in my hands, in my feet, or in the ache in my back as I'm sitting on the chair. You're here in that with me, and so there's so I'm davening to myself, right? I'm not davening to something remote from myself. I'm just the davening is just self-reflective, really, and so it's niskabel. Okay, so valideze yadu lakasher halamos ad shetachal kedusha yonaba. Right, and through this you can also connect worlds to each other, levels of consciousness, and so. Okay, so how do you do this? Ketzad. Yachshov ha'adam lehechin rosho. So first you begin by focusing on preparing your head. Kisei l'shem havaya b'kamas. And you arrange, you sort of prepare yourself. You prepare yourself by focusing on the fact that your head is a kisei, is a space where the shem havaya, written with kamatzes as the nakuda rests. Okay, which is related, which is the shema, which is the way that you write the shem havaya if you want to communicate the idea of keser, basically, right? So you can picture, right, or you can picture it, but like in the way I produced it here, right? So that you have again the ChatGPT didn't do my prompts were not perfect, so it didn't do it exactly perfectly. I'm gonna do this on cloth and do it better by hand. But in any case, so I haven't seen this kavvanah of the Arizal ever depicted like this. So I think maybe it's unique, and hopefully I'll do something with it. But in any case, right? So you start with your head, right? You start with your head and you depict your head. Everything, my entire consciousness, my entire brain is just the shem havaya written with kamatzes. Okay, the kamatz under every letter. There should be a kamatz under every letter. Okay? ChatGPT messed it up, or Claude messed it up. There are four kamatz. Yeah, so yud with a kamatz, hey with a kamatz, vav with a kamatz, hey with a kamatz. That's keser. Okay? But that's what my head is. My head is just a shem havaya. It's not. I don't have a brain. It's not a brain. My brain, my head, my consciousness, my thinking. That's just a shem havaya operating. Ubeis mochin delay. Beis havayas bepatach v'tziri, and the two aspects of my head, right? The two mochin, chachma and bina, right? My big thinking, my big picture thinking, my unified thinking, and my detailed thinking, my chachma and my bina, because as I'm davening or as I'm learning, those two are operating, and I can experience and feel them operating if I'm sort of stepping outside myself a little bit, and I can sort of look at myself from the top down and see that happening, right? As I'm davening, I'm paying attention to the word, but I'm also paying attention to the sentence. So that's Chachman Bina right there happening. I'm paying attention to the sentence, but I'm also paying attention to the entire paragraph, the entire parak of Tehillim that I'm in the middle of in Zimra, or the fact that I'm in a bracha, but that bracha is part of Shemona Esrei. Both of those things are happening at the same time, right? So there's Chachman Bina always operating at the same time. What is my big thinking and my narrow thinking, my expansive, unified thinking and my pratyistic thinking? That's just the shem havaya with patas and the shem havaya with seres. That's what it is. It's not. I have a right brain and a left brain, and they're doing independent work. My right brain is a havaya with patas. It's chesed. It's chacham. And my left brain, my detailed thinking, is a shem havaya with seres. That's what it is. And you picture that. You can picture. There are different ways to do this, but you can picture it. You can just be aware of it. But either way, ubeis ro'osav, and my two arms, beis havayos segel v'shva, and my two arms are also two havayas, right? So we're skipping a little bit, but we're going to, right. So those are also two havayas, keneged, chesed, and gevura, which are again also my right hand and my left hand, my right arm and my left arm are also right. So whatever it is that I'm doing, my right hand's in my pocket. It's just my right arm. It's not my right arm in my pocket. It's just that right arm is formed by a shem havaya written with segels. That's what it is. And my left hand is doing whatever it's doing, and then but it's not a separate entity from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in any way. It is an expression it is a manifestation of the shem havaya written with shvas. Haguf bahavaya cholam, and my guf, the trunk of my body, right? From my neck down, right? The trunk of my body and my spine. How does my back feel, right? Or have I been standing a long time? So my back, I'm feeling something in my back, or I'm feeling something in my stomach muscles, or whatever it happens to be. So that in and of itself, or maybe I'm davening is too long. I'm feeling my chest is tight or my stomach is empty or whatever, right? So I'm feeling that in my body. That's not my body that I'm feeling. That is the Shem Havaya written with columns manifesting. Right. Ubeis Yerechosav, and my two thighs. Beis Havayas Chirik Vishurik V'Yisodo B'Nikud Malufum, and HaTorah Havaya B'Li Nikud Kinizkar B'Tikunim V'Yechaven, and even further, right? Not just we can go back up. V'Yechaven Ki Ozen, my ears. The gematria Shem Sag, the word Ozen, the word Ozen itself is connected the Shem Sag. We talked about Shemas Miluyim before, I think, but right, there's a way to write the Shem Havaya out here. It's right. If you write it Yud Vav Daled Hey Yud Vav Aleph Vav Hey Yud, it equals 63 Sag. So that's associated with the ear. That Shem Milui of so on the chart, right? So my ears are sags, are shemos of Hashem, but which shem is that? They're Havaya de Sag. That's what it's called, right? And that's what my ear is right now. And not only that, he says, Ulai nasig imzel lishma eza kedusha b'tfilaseinu. And so what are you machavin? And so if my ear is just a vehicle for the manifestation of the Shem Sag, and the Shem Sag is the power behind hearing. So my ear, maybe I'm going to hear something kaddish. I'm going to process through my ear something holy through my tefillah, through my learning. That's what's happening right now as I'm davening. Gamachotem shalo, gematria sag, and the nose is also gematria sag. They correspond to sag in different ways. Ulay yarviach eza kedusha. Maybe I'm going to smell something good, right? The cholent or whatever it is. I'm going to smell something that's going to reflect that's going to give me a certain kind of experience. Gam bepeshalo b'gematria sag v'chaf beit asman, and the peh is right. The peh is 85. That's sag 63 plus 22 letters. Chaf beit asman, the 22 letters of the aleph base. V'ulai, and maybe then appreciating that my mouth is a Shem Sag combined with the 22 letters which come out of my peh. Ulai yasig l'roach Hashem davar bo be'es tefillah. So maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu now is speaking through me. The Shekhinah is speaking mitoch groni, is speaking through my mouth, through my throat, as I'm uttering words of tefillah. It's not me uttering words of tefillah. It's the Shem Sag combined with the Yud Beis Osios of the Aleph Beis that are speaking those words, right? This is Hashem Sifsei Tiftach, right? Hashem, that when we say before Shemona Esrei, right? We're saying anything I'm going to say here is you saying it. I'm not saying. If I'm capable of saying anything, it's only because you're making me say it, and because you're enabling me to say it, which is similar to this idea. And all of this works depending on like how well you do it, obviously. Right? And when you look at something, you see something, you can appreciate that your two eyes correspond to Chachma and Bina. And so it's certain if the person does this, if the person practices like this for an extended period of time, it doesn't happen so quickly and it doesn't happen so easily. But if you do this and you work on this, that then you'll be able to grasp whatever you want, right? You can use this as a vehicle. Then you turn it on, turn it off. It's no problem. And then when it's on, everything processes differently, completely differently. And you process everything like you become like one of the malachim, because nothing is processed as pure physicality. Everything is being processed through. You are a pure expression of the Ratzon Hashem, because you're just Shemas Havaya. That's all you are. This is the secret of the idea of B'chol derech echad evi. You should know HaKadosh Baruch Hu in all your ways, all my ways, right? Every movement, right? Ubeprat imhu b'chol rega yachsho v'lo yavar machshav. And certainly, if you do this all the time, right? You don't turn it on and off. You just turn it on and you never turn it off. V'zachar v'al tishchaseh. So remember this, don't forget it, and so on. So in any case, I just wanted to get through that just as a broader illustration of this idea of Mibsari Arizal Lokai, which is his introduction into the idea of now using the idea of, well, let's look at ourselves. We're composed of mochin and middos. So then we're going to split the Sefiros up as well into the idea of mochin and middos to help better understand what they're corresponding to.